gentlemen of the jury. We begin another day of trial. You will recall that when we recessed yesterday, that Tabitha Claytor, a witness called on behalf of the state of Ohio, was in the witness chair, and the state was conducting direct examination. So is counsel for each side ready to begin this morning?
Yes, sir.
Ask Ms. Claytor to step in. Ms. Claytor, this is continuous testimony, so I would just remind you, you recall taking an oath yesterday, oath or affirmation before occupying the witness chair?
Yes.
That oath is still in effect today, all right? So you may have a seat, and the state may continue its examination.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome back. Ms. Claytor, we talked a lot yesterday, and we had talked about your relationship with George Wagner and how that progressed, and how initially you saw him for a short period of time and then broke up, but then reunited basically when you were a senior in high school, correct?
Yes.
And at that time you started living with him, and it progressed to marriage, and then approximately a year later having a child, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you lived first at Bethel Hill and then eventually at Peterson Road after the house on Bethel Hill was burned down, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that we were talking about were kind of the family dynamics. And if you could just tell us what the family dynamics were there when you lived with the Wagners.
Very strange and controlling.
Okay. And when you say strange and controlling, can you tell us what observations did you make? What makes you say that?
Well, I mean, it's, if Angela made a rule, then you had to follow that rule.
And I believe you already talked some about, the fact that your family wasn't allowed around, that Angela was the one that went with you to the hospital instead of your own mother, and she spent the night with you at the hospital instead of George even, correct?
Yes.
Was there a time where you also wanted to breastfeed Bovine, and that did not happen?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us why that happened?
Well, whenever we were at the hospital, Angela had said that since my son was still crying, he was still hungry, so I wasn't making enough. So I needed to formula feed him.
Okay. And did you get conflicting information from the lactate specialist who was at the hospital?
I'm sorry?
Hearsay.
I would say medical treatment and diagnosis, Your Honor.
Well, it may be a leading question as well. I mean,
Okay. I can lay foundation, Your Honor.
sustain the objection.
Where did you go to have your son?
SOMC.
Okay. And while you were at SOMC, as part of having given birth to your first child, Did you consult with a lactation specialist while you were in the hospital?
Yes.
And can you tell us what, if anything, the lactation specialist told you as far as your milk and,
Is there an exception to the hearsay rule here?
I would say this is medical hearsay, Your Honor. It's an exception as medical diagnosis or treatment.
That, yes.
Did you want to continue to try to breastfeed your son?
Yes.
Okay. However, was your son provided formula instead?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about Evangeline made a rule that had to be followed. Were you ever aware of family meetings that the Wagners would have at their house?
Yes.
And can you tell us how would those occur? What would be the topics of discussion?
I don't know what the topics were. I was never allowed to be in those meetings.
Okay. And how did you know one of those meetings was occurring?
I was asked to leave.
Okay. And who would be involved in the family meetings?
George, Jake, Billy, and Angela.
And were you aware as to whether or not they took votes in those meetings?
Basis.
I asked if she's aware. It's a yes or no question, Your Honor.
Well, I'll let her answer yes or no to that question, but, all right.
What would be the foundation to the speculation?
Well,
I'm
the
asking her
next
if she was aware.
the next question I may not allow, depending if there's no foundation for it, but she can answer a question, yes or no. You can ask her that question again.
Thank you, Your Honor. Were you aware as to whether they took votes at that meeting, at those meetings?
Kind of.
Okay. What do you base your knowledge on? I'm asking if she-
I'll overrule that. I'll let her answer that question. Now, that's a limited question, what you base that knowledge on.
Towards the end of the meetings, they would usually argue.
Okay. Were you ever informed of the outcome of any of those meetings?
That's yes or no. That's a yes or no question.
What was the question?
Were you ever informed of the outcome of any of those meetings or any decisions that had been made as a result?
Yes.
You said yes? Okay. And can you tell us, at some point, did you learn that the Wagners had made a fake Facebook account for you?
Yes.
Objection is to who, Judge?
Well, it's leading, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Do you have Facebook accounts?
Yes.
Facebook accounts that you've created?
I've created some of them, but there's some that I have not.
Okay. Tell us about the ones that you did not create.
Objection.
We're-
Foundation.
Your Honor, can we
I'll
approach?
let her-
Okay. Tell us about the ones that you did not create.
There's one that's under Tabitha Wagner that says that I live in Marion, Ohio.
Objection is to content.
Say it again.
Objection is to content.
As to what?
The content of the statement.
Well, it may go beyond the question as well. I'm not sure what you're asking her.
Okay. How did you discover this Facebook account that you did not create?
Friends and family told me.
Okay. Did you locate the Facebook account?
Yes.
And did you confirm that you in fact had not created it?
Yes.
And what kind of information, was the information in it accurate?
No.
Okay. At that time, you lived with the Wagners, correct?
Yes.
Where did it indicate that you lived?
Marion, Ohio.
Did it also indicate a job?
Objection.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to
I take
overrule
all
that
hours.
objection. Let her answer.
Did it indicate a job that you had?
Yes.
And what was that job, if you recall?
Working at a motel.
Okay. Did you work at a motel at
No.
that time? Okay. Right. Ms. Prater, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit EE1. If you would take a moment and look through those pages, it's multiple pages we put together. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that as?
A fake Facebook account for me.
Okay. And drawing your attention to the friends there, at the top of the page there, do you recognize any of those individuals?
Yes.
And who do you recognize those as?
This is Georgia's family or their friends from the past.
Okay. And again, you did not create that account yourself?
No.
Okay. Did you give anybody permission to
No.
create that for you? Okay. Ms. Claytor, were you working for a period of time when you lived with the Wagners?
Yes,
And where were you working?
at Crystal Springs,
Okay. And what is Crystal Springs?
the group home that Frederica Wagner owns.
Okay. That your mother also worked for?
Yes,
Okay. And when did you start working there?
March. I think right after we got married, I think. It was around the time of the wedding.
Around the time of the wedding that you started?
Yeah,
Okay. So I believe you testified yesterday, you graduated in 2012, correct?
yes,
And then got married the same year,
yes,
July of that year? And then you started working there at some point around that time?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Was there a time when you were unfaithful to George after you were married?
Yes,
Okay. And was it during the time that you were working at Crystal Springs?
yes,
Did George and the rest of the family find out about that?
yes,
You ultimately told them.
yes.
And at that point, did the restrictions in your life get even more severe?
Yes.
Tell us what happened then.
I had gotten let go from my job. George took my phone from me and factory reset it and gave it to his mom. I wasn't allowed to answer the house phone or check the mail or go outside by myself.
And when you informed them of this, at that time were you pregnant with Bullvine?
Yes,
Okay. So you remained at the home with the Wagners?
yes,
Okay. And then you remained there until approximately a year after your son was born, correct?
yes.
Okay. Did you feel when you were there that you could parent your child in the way that you wanted to?
No,
Tell us about that.
every night before we went to bed, I would be made to go take a nap while Angela played with my son.
So again, just more of her spending time with your child that you wanted to spend time with?
Yes,
Okay. Did you ever tell George or have any discussions with him about wanting to have your own place and no longer living with the extended family?
yes,
Okay. And what was his response?
that we lived on a farm, so we needed to all live together.
He was not interested in moving out?
No,
Why did you want to get your own place together?
so I could have a little bit more freedom with my own home.
Did you think it would also improve things between you and your husband?
Objection. Leading.
Well, it's a leading question, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
What did you think it would do to your relationship with your husband if you had your own place?
It would improve it.
Did Jake or George work while you lived there?
They started work a little bit before the house burnt down on Bethel Hill.
And what were they doing?
Working at some, I think, a car part factory.
And did they keep that job?
For a very short time.
Okay. Did they ever go to school for anything past the homeschooling?
Yes.
And what school did they go to?
The Career Center in McDermott.
Career Center where?
In McDermott.
Okay. And what did they go there for?
Auto mechanics.
Okay. They go together, like at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, did they ever get another job while you were with them?
It was George and Billy had a asphalt, they drove a semi-truck for an asphalt company.
You said George and Billy? had
Yes.
Asphalt?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember when that was?
I think it was before I got pregnant.
Okay. And you mean, like they owned the business? They
No.
created the business? Okay. They worked at that business?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know for how long that lasted?
Just a couple of months.
Okay. And do you remember any other jobs that they had?
They owned a semi-truck.
And what would they do with the semi-truck?
Get jobs and haul stuff, cattle.
Okay. Can you tell us, Tabitha, we've talked a little bit about the event, or how long you stayed there. What made you leave when you left?
Me and George were in an argument and he slapped me.
Okay. And if you can tell us, first of all, do you recall when that happened?
A couple of months after my son's first birthday.
Okay. And when was your son born again? Was that July of?
2013.
Okay. You said a few months after his first birthday?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us what led up to that argument?
Me not cleaning the kitchen after Angela had made lunch.
after Angela had done what?
Made lunch.
Okay. And so tell us about that. How did you know you were supposed to do that?
She told me to get it cleaned up while her and Hannah went to pick up a toy for the kids.
And did you do that?
No,
Why not?
because my son had woke up, so I laid with him to take a nap, so he could take a nap.
Okay. Was your son already napping at the time that
Yes.
Angela asked you to do that? Okay. And where were the rest of the people? Where was Jake and George at that time?
They were, I think Jake was with Billy driving the truck, and George was building the building that was beside the house.
Doing what?
Building the shed that is beside the house.
Okay. And I've been having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but if you can just make sure you're close to yeah, you're good. Thank you. Okay, so what happens then? Jake and Billy are gone, George is doing the shed, and Hannah and Angela have gone to pick up a toy. And your son wakes up, and so you lay down with him so he'll go back to sleep,
Yes.
correct? Okay. So then what happens?
Angela and Hannah come back and see that I didn't clean up the mess.
So what happens then?
Then me and Angela start to argue.
Okay. Did you explain to her what had happened?
Yes.
And what happened then?
George didn't like that I was yelling at his mother.
Basis of that is, well, I'll overlook.
How did you know he didn't like that? What happened?
He came in and started smacking me with a belt.
And where in the house were you at that time?
In the kitchen doorway.
And what happened then?
We went to the bedroom.
And when you say we, who do you mean?
Me and George.
Okay. And what happened there? He objected, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. Oh, another objection? I'm sorry. Basis is overruled.
What happened in the bedroom?
I was gonna go out and sit on the porch so I could calm down and not be so angry.
Okay. So you wanted to go outside to just be by yourself, calm down, and not be as angry?
Yes.
Okay. Were you permitted to go outside?
No.
How were you not permitted to go outside?
George stood in front of the door and wouldn't let me.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
I bit him and tried to rip his nuts off.
Okay. When you say you bit him, where did you bite him?
On his arm, up towards his armpit.
Okay, and why did you bite that area of his arm? What was he doing at that point?
He had his arm against the door, not letting me go through it.
Okay. Did he let you pass at that point?
He grabbed a hold of his nuts, so his arm moved, so that's whenever I ran out the door.
And then what did you do?
I started walking through the yard, and then George and Angela came outside to try to tell me to come back inside.
And what happened outside?
I told them that I was not going to go back inside, that I was going to leave, and so Angela threw a board at me, and then told George that she was going to go inside and get a gun.
When you say she threw a board at you, what kind of a board?
A 2x4.
And both Angela and George were outside with you at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And then Angela says she's going to go get a gun.
Yes.
At any point outside, did George have physical contact with you?
Yeah, before the argument got really worse, we were outside and we were arguing, and he told me I needed to stop screaming or he was going to smack me, and so I screamed louder, and so he smacked me
Okay. And where did he smack you?
in the face.
Okay. And then, what was your response to that?
I told him that he just signed his divorce papers.
Did he just sign his divorce papers because he smacked you?
Yes.
Okay. So when Angela says she's going to go get a gun, what do you do?
I continue going out the yard and through the fence, and I hid underneath of George's truck.
You said you hid under George's truck?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, where were George or Angela at that point?
I assumed they were going in to get whichever gun they chose.
They did not chase you at that time?
No.
Okay. And can you tell us what time of the day this argument first started? And I don't need an exact time, but was it the afternoon? Was it the evening?
It was near evening.
Okay. Was it dark when the argument occurred?
It started to get dark.
Okay. And did you have any more contact with them while you were still there hiding under George's truck?
No.
Did you see any of them? Did they
There
appear to?
were flashlights.
Okay. You said there were flashlights, plural? More than
Yes.
one flashlight?
Yes.
Okay. And at this point, where were you?
I was still underneath the George's truck.
Okay. And can you just explain to us, like, how under his truck you are? Like, how are you positioned in relation to?
Under the cab, basically.
Okay.
Right behind the front tires.
Did they find you?
No.
did they eventually give up looking for you?
Yes.
And what did you do at that point?
I got out from underneath of the truck and went to the barn and got my bicycle.
Okay. And at that time, how many barns were on that property?
Just one.
Okay. And was that the older barn?
Yes.
Okay. You had a bicycle there?
Yes.
Okay. When they were out with the flashlights, were they saying anything? Were they calling to you at all, or
No.
they were just looking?
They were just moving around the yard and underneath of things.
Okay. Did they ever look underneath the truck?
Not that I can remember.
And you got your bicycle, you said, and what did you do?
I left. I went to the gas station up the road by McDonald's.
Okay. And can you tell us, at that point, was it dark?
Yes.
Okay. And dark out there, right, in the country? What, approximately how far is that to the gas station?
Driving, it's about 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay. And can you tell us why were you hiding from them?
I didn't want to get shot.
And did you make it to the gas station?
Yes.
Okay. Did you encounter anybody along the way?
Yes.
Tell us who.
George and Jake in their red Suburban.
And what did they say to you?
They were trying to get me to get in the car so we could go home.
Did you agree to get into the car?
No.
What, if anything, did you say to them?
I told them that I wasn't going to live with them if they're going to hit me.
And what happened then? Or did you tell them where you were going?
I told them that I was going to go to the gas station so I could call my mom so she can come and get me.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
And how were you able to make that phone call at the gas station?
The cashier working that night gave me her cell phone.
You still did not have a phone with you?
No.
You called your mom,
Yes.
and did your mom come?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how long after you called your mom did she come?
Maybe about an hour and a half, about 2 hours.
Okay. And did you call the police?
No.
Okay. Were you offered to call the police?
Yes.
Who offered that to you?
The cashier.
Okay. You declined?
Yes.
Okay. Did you then see any more of the Wagners and/or police?
Yes, I seen both of them.
Okay. And can you tell us which of the Wagners did you see?
All 4 of them plus Hannah.
Okay. So Jake, George, Angela, Billy, and Hannah.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know where the children were at that time?
No.
And Did they remain in their car or did they get out of their car?
They got out and talked to the cop that was there.
Okay. And so the police also were there. What happened then?
The Wagners left and I was still sitting in the cop car waiting for my mom.
Okay. So you were at some point you got into the cop car?
Yes, he had me sit in there.
Okay. Did you become aware that the Wagners or George, someone filed a complaint against you?
Yes,
Okay. And what type of complaint was that?
domestic violence.
Okay. And what was alleged against you?
That I was causing a big fuss at home and dragging my child across the floor.
Did you drag your child across the floor?
No, I did not.
So you went, your mother picked you up. Where did you go when you left? When she picked you up?
Back to her house.
Okay. And who lived at her house at that time?
It was her and my stepdad and my little sister,
Okay. And what's your little sister's name?
Christina.
Chrissy or Christy?
Christina.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Did you ever go back to live with the Wagners after that?
No.
Okay. And did you press any charges against anybody that night?
No.
What happened with the criminal charges?
George gave me the money to pay some sort of fine that I guess he said that was supposed to be paid. And then George said that the charges were dropped.
And do you remember approximately how much after this thing happened that the charges were dropped?
It's just a couple of days, maybe a week.
And during this time, did you and George, or one or the other of you, move for a divorce or dissolution?
He filed for one.
Okay. And do you have a recollection of how soon after this happened that he filed for?
It's a couple of weeks.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did he have an attorney?
Yes.
Do you know who that attorney was?
No, I just remember it was a female.
Okay. And did you have an attorney?
No,
Why not?
because when we got divorced, since I didn't have my own place or a job, then he was supposed to have our son until I got a place.
Okay. And let me ask you also, were you able to afford an attorney at that time?
No, I had no job.
Okay. So did you meet with his attorney?
I met her once when George went to see her.
Okay. Did you meet him there, or did he take you, or do you recall?
I can't remember.
Okay. So you indicated that at that time you did not have your own place to live, and nor did you have a job at the time of the dissolution, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you indicated that he was supposed to have your son because of that, and that, what was your understanding of once you got a job or your own place, and your own place?
we were supposed to go back to court and we were supposed to do the 50-50 shared parenting.
Okay. That was something you discussed with George?
Yes,
Okay. And that was your understanding?
yes.
And what was your understanding of what the agreement that you signed, what was your understanding of what that was, or what it said?
That I was supposed to have supervised visits whenever we both agreed on a place and a time.
Okay. And whenever you both agreed, correct?
No, I didn't agree on that.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said you were to have supervised visits and at whatever time you both agreed?
Yes,
Is that what you said?
yes,
Okay,
the time and place for the visitation we were supposed to agree on.
okay. So based on your understanding of the agreement, did you believe that George alone got to decide when you get to see Bullvine, sorry, your son, or did you believe that you would have input into that and you guys would reach an agreement about that?
I thought that me and him would talk about it and figure out when we both had time to see him.
Okay. And is that what happened?
No,
Okay, tell us about that.
after we got divorced, it was about a year before I got to see my son again.
And why was that?
Because George wouldn't let me.
Did you seek out or try to have opportunities to see your son during that time period?
Yes,
And in fact, was there a point where you got a job and moved out of your mother's home?
yes.
And can you tell us, were there times that you were told that you could see him, but then,
It is leading, so sustain the objection.
you indicated that it was approximately a year before you were ever able to see your son,
Yes.
correct? Tell us if you ever attempted to make arrangements or did make arrangements.
Yes, I had asked him multiple times if I can come and see him, and he would either say not right now, or we would make a time, or he would tell me a time that I could come to his house and see him.
And would you see him during those times where well, first of all, what excuses would he give you as far as not right now?
That they were busy or they weren't going to be home.
And tell me about a time where you were given a time.
The first time I got to see him again, me and George met at McDonald's.
And you were able to see him then?
Yes, to drop off his Christmas presents.
And if I told you that your dissolution was final in January of 15, first of all, does that match your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. So would have it been that first Christmas, like December, like basically 11 months later that you were able to meet? Or was it?
Yes, it was later that year.
Okay. And that was the first time you saw him after you had left in November of 2014?
Yes.
And during that time, before you were able to see him the first time, did he ever agree to meet you but then not be there?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
I would ask him what day I can come over, and if he did make a day and a time for me to come over, I would either be in the driveway asking where he's at, or I would be about halfway there, and he would tell me that they're not home right now.
Okay. And you said there was a time when you arrived at his home, but your son was not present?
Yes.
Okay. Was anybody in your family allowed to accompany you when you were granted visits?
Only the first time at McDonald's, and that was because he didn't know that she was with me.
Okay. And who is she?
My mother.
Okay. Were you also told your sister could not accompany you on any visits?
All right, I'll sustain the objection, it's a leading question.
Were you ever told any other relative was not allowed to accompany you on visits?
Yes, none of my sisters or anyone could come with me.
And did George give you a reason as to why your sister or sisters could not?
Because he did not like them.
How many times would you say you were granted visits with your son? If we start with the McDonald's in December of 2015, that gets us into 2016. How many times approximately would you say you got to see your son in 2016?
Maybe 7 or 8 times.
And where would those visits occur?
At George's house.
And did you ever meet with an attorney about the issues you were having with visitation during 2015?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember that attorney, who that was?
No, I do not remember his name.
Okay. And how did you know to go to that attorney, or how did you choose that attorney?
That's where my mom took me. He said that he would give me a free consultation.
Okay. And did he give you a free consultation?
Yes.
Okay. And did he give you advice as to how to proceed in trying to regain contact with your son?
Yes.
Okay. And did you follow his advice?
Yes.
Did he ever file anything for you in 2015?
I don't believe so.
Was part of his advice to, what was his advice?
Sustain.
What did you do as a result of his advice?
I had called or texted George and told him that I needed to see him, and I would make a note of when I seen him or when I attempted to see him.
Okay. And did you ever write him a letter in the regular mail?
Yes, I personally put one in his mailbox and then I mailed him one. It was the Sauter County or Ohio's shared parenting plan.
Okay. And why did you give him the shared parenting plan?
That's what the attorney advised me to do.
Okay. And in the shared parenting plan, you would have received more and regular visitation with your son, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is that what you were seeking at that time?
No.
Okay. You were trying to get contact with your son?
Yes.
And can you tell us when you would visit your son, did he recognize you as his mother?
No.
Tell me about that.
I wasn't allowed to tell him that I was his mother.
Why? Or who told you that?
And George told me not to mention anything about a mother because my son's cousin was there and she had just lost her mother.
Okay. And that would have been then, obviously, at some point after April of 2016, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you become aware of the fact that the Wagners, Jake, George, Billy, Angela, your son, went to Alaska?
No.
Okay. When was your first awareness of that?
I believe it was about a week or two after they had moved down there.
Okay. And how did you find out?
Pretty sure it was a friend that told me.
Okay. And so you had not received any notice in advance that they were going to take your son and move to Alaska?
Please.
I'm summarizing what you
Well,
wrote.
All right, I'll sustain the objection to the form of the question if you want to ask it another way.
Did you get notice before they left to go to Alaska?
No.
What did you do as a result of that?
I had called and asked him why he left without telling me.
And what was his response?
That it's his son, he needs to do what's best for him.
Did you tell him that you felt that violated your agreement?
Yes.
Do you have a recollection of how long they were in Alaska?
About a year.
And during that time, were you able to have contact with your son?
No.
Did you have any contact by phone with him?
No, every time I tried to call and talk to him, he said that he was either too busy or he was asleep.
Did you eventually file for change of custody?
No,
At any time did you? Like in 2018, did you, I guess?
Basis of that. Well, I'll overrule it, let her answer.
Okay. At some point, did you file something with the courts regarding your son?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did you eventually get custody of your son?
Yes,
Okay. And can you tell us when that was?
it was 2018, I believe.
Okay. Okay, I've now remarked this as joint exhibit number 1. If you can just look through this and tell me if you recognize that at all.
Yes.
Okay, and what do you recognize that as?
This is our divorce papers.
Okay? And it's entitled on the front page as Judgment Entry Decree of Dissolution, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And the file date there shows a January of 15 date, correct?
yes.
Okay. And I don't know that you necessarily have had an opportunity to look through all of that, but does that look like the agreement that you entered into with George Wagner?
Yes.
Okay. And if you go to the page 30 of that document, do you see in the upper right-hand corner?
Okay.
Okay. In that paragraph A, it says that the husband shall be named the custodial and residential parent with responsibility for the care, residential custody, and control of the minor child. And then the parenting time with states that this provides parenting time with the minor child as can be agreed upon between the parties at reasonable times, correct?
Yes.
Both parties agree to cooperate on the parenting time schedule, correct?
Yes.
Further, the parties agree that they will cooperate as dependent.
No.
What did you think it would be?
I thought that, I was going to be able to go pick up my son and take him to dinner or just to watch a movie or something like that and then drop him back off.
Okay. So as far as supervised, you didn't recognize that that meant only at their house, only with them present, the Wagners present?
Yes.
Okay. But you did believe that, again, the parties would be agreeing to reasonable times as opposed to George deciding whether or not you get to see your son.
Yes.
And again, during that first year of 2015, did you see him for any holidays other than Christmas at McDonald's? During that first year?
No.
And again, I believe you already indicated that your belief was that agreement would go to shared parent, the 50-50, I think you called it, at the point that you had your own place and had a job, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Wagner, when you said that you gained custody in 2018, was that the result of George agreeing to that, or was that a court decision?
What was that?
When you said you got custody back of your son in 2018, was that because George gave your son back to you, or was it the result of a court action?
It was a court action.
Okay. And Ms. Claytor, can you tell us, when you were having contact with the Wagners, George, prior to them moving to Alaska, so during that, then I think 2016 is when you were start actually to have some contact with your son, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there ever a time when you had seen your son, well, first of all, did they know, you had made them aware already that you were seeking more contact and contemplating court action, correct?
Yes.
And was there a time when something occurred after you had visited your son at their house?
Yes.
And can you tell us what that is?
I got pulled over by, I think it was State Highway Patrol, because there was a call that I was waving a gun around and throwing trash out, and that I had drugs in my car.
Okay. And how did you know that was what somebody had said?
Well, I'm going to let her answer that question, how she knew.
Okay. How did you know that?
That's what the cop had told me.
And as a result of that, did you offer for him to look into your car and see if there was any of the items that were alleged to have been there?
Yes.
Okay. And did he find anything?
He didn't look.
Okay. And Ms. Claytor, have you ever had a drug problem at all?
No.
Was there another time that something happened after you had visited your son at the Wagner residence?
Yes.
And can you tell us, do you recall when that would have been?
Was around Mother's Day or Easter.
And what year would that have been? Do you recall?
2016.
And can you tell us what happened?
My 6-month-old daughter became unresponsive, so we took her to the emergency room where they did tests and found drugs in her system.
Tell me, first of all, this was a child of yours.
Yes.
She was 6 months old at the time.
Yes.
And had she been with you at the Wagner residence that day?
Yes.
And tell us what kinds of interactions she had with the other people in the home.
She had stayed on my hip for a while until Angela had asked to see her. And so I gave her to her so she could see her while I went and used the restroom.
Other than that time period where you were in the restroom, was your daughter out of your view while you were at the Wagners that day?
No.
And did you make it back home before you noticed that about your daughter as far as her physical condition?
Yeah, I had made it home.
Okay. And when you say she was unresponsive, what do you mean by that?
She was just laying there staring off into space. I went to pick her up and she was as limber as a newborn.
And what did you do as a result of that?
I had woke my husband and we took her to the emergency room,
Okay. And do you recall where you went?
the SOMC.
And you indicated that they did some tests, and do you know what drug they found in her system?
Xanax.
Were you prescribed Xanax at all?
No,
Your husband?
no,
Did you have any Xanax in your home at all?
no.
And had you been anywhere else that day?
No.
And as a result of that, was there a children's service investigation?
Yes.
Okay. And did both you and your husband submit to drug tests?
We did, but they did not do them at the hospital.
Okay. Did you volunteer to do them at the hospital?
Yes.
But you did take tests later?
About a week later.
Okay. And were those negative?
Yes.
At the time that happened, did you voice your concerns or suspicions that it had happened at the Wagner house?
Not at first, no.
Okay. Did you ultimately voice that
Yes.
concern and suspicion? Okay. And again, that was during the time frame where you were actively trying to get more contact and custody of your child.
Yes.
Is your son still with you?
Yes.
Along with your two daughters, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you were in the home, we talked about your relationship with Hannah, where you said you were both competing for Angela's affection, basically.
Yes.
Right, okay. And can you tell us, after Hannah left that home, did you have contact with her?
Yes.
Okay, and what form would the contact be in?
Unless we ran into each other at a store somewhere, it was over text.
Okay. And did you also Facebook message with her?
Yes, that's how we texted.
Okay. And why do you text that way?
It's convenient.
Okay. And can you tell us, Ms. Wagner, we talked about your Facebook, the one that you yourself had not created, that I showed you earlier. You did have a Facebook that you created and you communicated through, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was it through that Facebook profile that you communicated with Hannah Rhoden?
Yes, it was through the one that I created.
Okay. And regarding that Facebook account, had you ever given anybody else permission to look at or operate or handle your account other than yourself?
No.
Okay. And every Facebook account has a password, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever provide that Facebook password to anybody?
No.
Specifically, did you ever provide it to George or Angela or Billy or Jake Wagner?
No,
Did they ever have your permission to look at your Facebook
no.
account? And if you can tell us, when you say you text Hannah Mae, is that on the public page where everybody can see it, or is it a private message that you send?
Private.
Okay. So unless somebody were logged into your account, they would not be able to see those private messages, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall having conversations about the time that both you and Hannah lived at the Wagner residence with Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, okay. Well, yeah, why don't we do that? Okay. Ms. Clater, I'm going to approach you with what I'm marking as State's Exhibit EE2. Ms. Clater, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit EE2. And you will note that there are markings on this currently with yellow highlighting. I'm going to refer you specifically first to a message from March 25th of 2015. Are you able to see that? Your eyes aren't as bad as mine are at this point in life.
I can see it.
Okay. So the highlight is over there to the right of that particular message. And first of all, if you can look at that, it appears to have been a message from Hannah to you. And if you can read that, and if you can tell us if you recall receiving that Facebook message from Hannah Rhoden.
It says, I just want to say I'm sorry for being a bitch
So wait a
when,
question, listen to the question and answer the question.
Okay, do you recognize that as a message you received from Hannah?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could go ahead and tell us what it says.
It says, I just want to say I'm sorry for being a bitch when you was down there and being rude and shit. That's honestly not who I am. That's who I was told to be. But you can text me if you want, if you have my number.
Okay. Do you recall receiving that message from Hannah Rhoden?
Yes.
Okay, in March of 2015?
Yes.
Okay. And specifically, as to that message, did anybody other than yourself have permission to access or view it?
No.
Then referring you to, there are some additional messages, all from March 28th of 2015, and the marking is to the left of that. It starts with, so Cody said,
Yes.
okay. Again, if you can look over that and tell me if you recall receiving that message, or that receiving and replying
Yes.
to that message chain. Okay. And can you tell us what that says?
I said, so Cody said you and Jake are going to be going through a custody thing. Hannah says, yeah, trying to get a job. And she also says we are supposed to go to court over it. I said, well, you are the mother, so it shouldn't be hard on your part. But we are dealing with Angela. And then I also said, and we know how she gets when it comes to Vine and Sons.
Sorry, Jeff. The noise out
you
Yeah,
have-
we have some
Perfect
competing
timing.
noise out there. So I just ask you to keep your, now that the noise is over, could you answer the question again? If you can
Yes.
answer it,
Um,
but, She had, maybe she needs to give that again.
Okay, the last part you said, just start where you said, well, you are the mother, and then read from there. I think that's when the,
I said, well, you are the mother, so it shouldn't be hard on your part, but we are dealing with Angela. And you know how she gets when it comes to Vine and Suds.
okay. And who is Vine?
My son,
Okay. And who is Suds?
her daughter,
Whose daughter?
Hannah Rhoden's daughter.
Okay. And that's a nickname for her?
Yes,
Okay. And what is her actual name?
Sophia.
Okay. And do you recall having that conversation with Hannah Rhoden on Facebook in March of 2015?
Yes,
And same question, did anybody other than yourself have permission to access that, those Facebook messages?
no,
Referring you down to May 17th of 2015, I believe there's another marking along this side
yes,
where it starts out with, have you gotten to see Vine lately? Do you see that?
yes.
Okay. And first, if you can kind of look over that from May 17th. And do you recall having that conversation?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell us what it says?
Hannah Rhoden asked me if I've gotten to see Vine lately. I said, no, not yet. Every time I set a date to see him, George has something to do or somewhere to go. He tells me he will message me back when he gets home, but then he never messages me back. Hannah says, uh-oh, I would be really upset. I would say I'm scared to death that they are going to try and take Sophia. I said, oh, I am, and it kills me. Well, you know, since y'all was not married, she goes to you automatically. And he is the one that gets to see her every other weekend or whatever. Hannah says, yeah, I know, but they could fight that. I said, yeah, but a judge ain't gonna take her away from you. You have a good home and people to help take care of her. She says, I know. I'm trying to get me a place as soon as possible and a job.
And once again, Ms. Clater, do you recall having that conversation with Hannah Rhoden back in May of 2015?
Yes.
And once again, did anybody other than yourself have permission to access and look at that message?
No.
And just for clarification, it says there Tabby Breach. Can you tell us who Tabby Breach is?
Breach is my maiden name.
Okay, so that is in fact you,
Yes.
correct? Okay. If, I don't have my watch on today, so I apologize. If it's time for a break, that's,
Well,
or I can keep
it's actually a
going.
little past time. If we take our 15-minute break now, then do you want to go a little longer before lunch?
I can keep going if, you know, perhaps we should ask the jury.
Or we can
I'm
take-
happy to go and then break for lunch.
Or we can take our lunch break now or in a few minutes. It's 11:20, 11:22 is what my watch says. So if we go to 11:30, we may want to break. Do you want to do that? Go to 11, another 5 or 10 minutes and then break? Does that satisfy counsel for the defense as well? Let's do that, and then we just take our lunch break that way, a little early. If the jury, if any jury member has an urgent need right now, raise your hand for me. All right, so we'll go about another 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
Seeing no hands in the air.
Handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit EE3. And there's a long line there. First of all, if you can look at that, there's a May 28th of 2015 appears to be a conversation between you and Hannah, but if you could look at that and tell me if you recall having that conversation.
Yes.
Okay. And if you could tell us what that conversation says, starting with going day by day.
It says going day by day, same as you, only you get to see suds. I try to see Vine, but don't have a ride on the weekends, and George is working through the week. He says, and he won't meet me anywhere, even though the papers say both parties have to agree. Hannah says, what do your papers say? I said that both parties, as in me and George, have to agree on a place and time, but when I ask him to meet me somewhere, because it costs $20 every time I go down there, if he would meet me somewhere, he says no. The judge gave me Vines the judge gave Vine to me, so it's his home only. It's where he is most comfy, but he's just fine going to other people's homes, and everywhere else he won't even meet me at McDonald's. Hannah says, I know. I said, plus every time I go down there, he has some reason, oh, Vine just went to sleep, or you can only be about 5 minutes, we're leaving soon, or something. Last time I was gonna go down there and stay for a few hours and see Vine, well, George and I was talking about it, and we made plans for me to come over on a Saturday around noon, so Vine wouldn't be napping. Well, it was raining that day, so I told George we would be going inside, me and my sister. Can I leave her name out of that?
Sure.
Well, he said that my sister had to drop me off and leave and come back when I was done. She don't have a phone for me to tell her I was done, so he said to have her wait by Joe's gate out by 32 or 23, whatever that road is. I asked why she can't just sit in the driveway in her car, and he gives me the BS reason and told me if I was gonna see Vine, I needed to get there because he was about asleep, so we pulled out. We called the law, and they said that it's his land and we can't do anything. I said, what the heck is the law there for if he ain't going to do anything? I said, what are they good for other than eating donuts and drinking coffee? Hannah says, exactly. Why is he that way? I said, because of what happened a long time ago, you probably heard about us fighting about it. We was always arguing over it, about what happened to me and my sisters a long time ago. That don't bother us, but he blames every one of my, what he calls problems on. Hannah says, yeah, I heard about it. That is what always gets brought up. I said, yeah, well, it happened forever ago, and it happened to... Can I leave the name out of that part? Thank you. But because we didn't say anything to anyone, he says my whole family is child molesters, and that's why he was going to make my sister come leave me leave and come back. But we was little kids. We didn't know what was happening or that it was wrong, nor does it bother us today. Yeah, we wonder now why it happened, but it doesn't change anything. I am who I am, and they are who they are.
Okay. And once again, Ms. Clater, I believe she says she's doing an experiment and she'll get back to you next. But regarding that portion of the conversation, do you recall having that conversation with Hannah Rhoden over Facebook Messenger?
Yes.
And once again, did anybody other than yourself have permission to access those messages and view them?
No.
Referring you down to the bottom of the page, I believe there's a few more, just a few lines there. Where it says, let's see.
It's not marked on here?
Oh, okay. That's because. Hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit EE4. And again, it looks like it is a continuation of that same date, May 28, 2016.
Would this be a good time to break since we're going into a new, I don't want to cut things off, but
I mean, it's up to the court, Your Honor.
will this be lengthy, this one? Or?
It's not as lengthy, but
All right. Why don't we take a break at this time?
Okay.
We've been going at it quite a while, it's 11:32. So we'll take our lunch break at this time. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, while you're on our noon break, or what we refer to as our lunch break, you're not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. You're not to permit this case to be discussed with you or in your presence. You're not to form or express an opinion concerning the case. You're not to do any research concerning the case, either as to the facts or as to the law from any source at all. You're not to read, listen to, or view any reports or accounts of this case from any source whatsoever. You're to have no contact with any participants in the case, including parties, counsel, or witnesses. We'll be in recess until 12:40. That's just a little bit more than an hour. So 12:40, assemble at the jury room. You'll be brought up from the jury room by court personnel. Does counsel for either party have anything before we recess for lunch?
no, Your Honor.
All right, so we are in recess until 12:40.